how to implement server-side authentication using Firebase and Express.js. Let's build a simple app. Here is what we are building today. It is a multi-page application. We have our home screen where we can click profile link, and profile is a protected route, so you cannot access it without being logged in. I already have prepared the user testauth.com. Let's log in, and we get redirected to profile page. If we log out, we will get redirected back to sign in screen. There is also a sign up screen, but we don't really need it. I've added it there only so that you can create new users. I've created an example repo that I will link in the description, and this repo contains two folders, two steps. First step is to create the structure of our application, create the HTML views. I'm not going to use any front-end framework, not React or Vue or anything. It will be just plain vanilla JavaScript and HTML. And also set up the server. It won't really contain any code for now that will manage the authentication part, but we will at least set up the routes that we will need to process. And in the step number 2, we will actually implement the Firebase part, where we'll authenticate our user and preserve the state on our backend. Now let's go through the code and see what do we have to do here. Let's begin with step 1. What do we have here? It's a regular Express application. We'll be using Express as our server. We will need a body parser plugin to be able to parse the post request body as JSON. We will use a CSRF package to protect us from CSRF attacks. I've added a bunch of links about cross-site forgery. So first it's Wikipedia page, and then it's OWSP website cheat sheet about cross-site forgery and how to prevent it. I recommend you reading it. And here's a link to the package we're using here, CSRF, that will basically create a token that we will send from the page that will be making our login request, so that we know that this page was created by us. This token will basically verify that this is our site, our form, it's legit, and we can actually log in through this particular form. Read about it on Wikipedia, it's gonna be useful. It doesn't have anything to do with Firebase yet. So we install that package. We also install cookie parser, because we will have to work with cookies. We'll have to write the cookie and we'll have to read the value from it. And then we have the code that initializes our application. So first we create the CSRF middleware. It will basically check if we have the required cookies in each of our requests. Then we define the constant for our port. We either take one from environment or use the default 3000. And then we instantiate Express. We set the engine to HTML. It doesn't really matter what you use. In my case, I didn't want to bother with Pug or Jade or whatever, so I decided to just use plain HTML. And also I set up the static folder, which I need because I wanted to use MVP CSS. This is a little CSS file that provides decent default look for all your HTML elements. So you basically can omit all the classes, use just regular HTML elements, HTML tags without classes, and they will already look nice. So it's quite useful. Then we enable the body parser. This is so that when we take the body property of the post request that we got from our front-end application, we don't have to bother parsing it as JSON manually. So it already comes parsed as JSON, so we can use it as an object. Then we use cookie parser, so it automatically works with cookies. And then we use the CSRF middleware that sets and automatically checks the CSRF related cookies. Next, what we do here is I create another middleware. If you don't know how Express.js works, it's basically a stack of middlewares. Each middleware has some logic in it, and after the logic is executed, it calls the next middleware in the stack. So we basically have a pipeline that works with our response and request objects. So when you have a request, first thing that will happen is all those middlewares that we defined here. So it will be static middleware, then request goes down the stack and we parse it with body parser, and each of those middlewares can do something with request object, somehow modify it. Then we use cookie parser, CSRF middleware. Then there is my middleware that takes any request and sets a cookie called XCSRF token with the CSRF token from request. And then I call the function next that passes us down to the next middleware. Next middleware is login or sign up or profile or whatever, because they are a little bit more picky. Unlike the first one that will be triggered by any request, those will be triggered only by specific routes. So for example, if we open the root route / we will just render our index.html. If it's profile, then it's, well, it's sign up. It should be profile actually. If it's sign up, it's sign up, and if it's login, it's login.html. So basically we add routing here. And then in the bottom of this file, we just launch our server by calling listen and then passing a port and a callback so that we just know when the server was launched successfully. Now, as you can see, on each route, we render some HTML file. Those files are located in the views folder. And if we open, for example, index.html contains just the basic layout to show the title, homepage header, the information that this page is public, and the link to profile. If we open profile page, we also have the header and we have an information that this page is private. And then we have a link to log out, because if we can open this page, then it means that we're logged in, and then we might want to pull this logout handle to just remove the session cookie. And session cookie is the way how we will preserve the logged in state. We will create a long living cookie that will live several days, I think 5 days. And this cookie will be HTTP only, which means that only backend can access it. And frontend can neither modify or read it. So it's only backend that will be able to touch this cookie. Next, we have two pages that will actually use Firebase in them. It's login and sign up page. They're quite similar. The only thing that will be different in them is that sign up will actually create new users. We will pull this handle, and login will just log us in. And those pages, they have to pull a bunch of JavaScript files. So what is going on here is that we have a bunch of scripts on login page. We currently have them in the bottom of our layout. And what happens here is first we load the Firebase SDK, then we load Firebase Auth SDK because we will need authentication methods for Firebase. Then we have the cookie library that allows us to read cookies, and we'll need it because we need to read the CSRF cookie. And here I have the listener that is listening for DOM content loaded event. And this is because I wanted to write defer for each script and actually put them in the header. So that we are not blocking the rendering and we load all those JavaScript assets in a non-blocking way. And because we need to know when it will load them, actually we will add this listener DOM content loaded that will be triggered when everything DOM related will get loaded on our page. And then I try to get element by ID login, and it's the form, and I add on submit listener that just prevents the default behavior. So for now we don't have any logic there. We just prevent the default behavior, which is just get by default the action of this form. Okay, that's the first part. We have the structure of our application. To start working with Firebase, first we will need to instantiate the Firebase application and enable admin SDK. Let's do it now. Go to console firebase.google.com, press add project. You will have to pick the project name, and let's say it's Express Server Auth. Continue. We don't really need the analytics. So press create project. We wait a little while. And we're finally done. Now we need to do two things. We need to go to authentication and enable email and password sign-in method. So we enable it, save. This will allow us to log in with email and password. If you need, you can enable any other way of signing in. Then we go to the settings. On the general tab, you select the web icon. I don't know, the HTML tag one. You click it, you name your app somehow, Express Server Auth, register app. And it will give you the settings that you will need to use in your front end. Now, I'm not going to copy them because in my application, I've already created the one before, because you saw it, it works. So this one is only an example how to obtain them. But you copy those settings, and then you will need to go to login HTML and paste it here. It will look like this. When the page is loaded, first thing you do, you paste the thing that you got from Firebase, where you basically instantiate the app, and then you call Firebase auth set persistence none. This will basically turn off the persisting of the logged in state on the Firebase behalf, because we will not need it, because we will create our own persistence layer that will be using the session cookie, as I told you before. And then here is the submit listener that you saw previously. Okay, we've set up the front end part by pasting the configuration for the Firebase to our login template in DOM content loaded callback. Now we need to set up the backend side. Go back to Firebase, close this thing, go to settings, service accounts, and here you need to click generate new private key. This thing will create a JSON file that you need to download. Here you go. It says that I need to download it. I'm not going to do it now, but you will have to do it. What you do next is you copy the contents of this file, and then you save it in the file called serviceaccount-key.json. So it will look somewhat like this, with of course your numbers and hashes and whatnot. That should be it. You should be now all set up on the Firebase behalf. Now let's get back to our code and see what do you still have to do in order to have server-side Firebase authentication. So first thing you see here is that we have another package called Firebase admin. Don't forget to install it. All those packages that I'm using here on server side, I have them installed through npm, and it's body parser, cookie parser, CSRF, EJS, Express, and Firebase admin. Don't forget to install them. If you will pull this example from GitHub, it will be enough to just run npm I, or better yarn, to install all the dependencies in this project. Now we go back to server.js, and we instantiate our admin side, our server side Firebase. We get an instance of admin from Firebase admin. We load the service account key JSON file, and then we call initialize app, passing our service account JSON as a credential certificate. And then it will handle the authentication and the initialization part automatically. And we also have to set the database URL. You see this database URL here. Basically what I've added there is this little snippet that is on service accounts page. So I copied it and I basically pasted it in the beginning of server instantiation. That is it. For now, everything else remains the same. Let's go to login.html file. So what happens here after we got our Firebase initialized? After we've initialized our Firebase library and we set our persistence to none, so that Firebase does not persist it in local storage or anything, we start listening to the submit event of our form. Our form has two fields, login and password. So first thing we do, we get those values from the event, and then we call Firebase auth sign in with email and password. We pass in their login and password, and it returns a promise. Promises allow us to work with deferred data, the values that we'll get later. So here it will make a network request, and then we can add the then callback. We will get the user object, and we'll be able to get the ID token. And when we get this ID token, then we call fetch, which is built-in browser API, to make a post request to session login of our Express.js backend. We're gonna send a bunch of headers telling that we're working with JSON here, and our CSRF token that we get from the cookies. This is the value that we actually wrote to the cookies using this particular middleware. So I'm using CSRF token generated by CSRF library. I put it into the XCSRF token cookie, and then in login HTML, when I'm doing the Ajax request, I'm getting this value from the cookie and sending it in the header to prove that it's me, Maxim, that got this form. Like, I'm not a hacker or someone, I'm just using this form legitimately. And then I pass the body containing stringified version of JSON. We basically take the object containing one field, ID token, that we got from Firebase, our identification token, and I pass it in stringified JSON. After the request was performed, I call Firebase auth sign out. I sign out from Firebase because it's not needed anymore. It will be the backend that will handle all the Firebase related activities. And then I navigate to profile, because now after we logged out, after we logged in on our server, we should be able to access this. So I navigate to profile. Now, what happens when you fetch this session login handle with the post method? Let's open our server.js and scroll down to this method declaration. Here we have a post handler session login route that takes the ID token that we send to it as a body of our post request. As you remember, we've installed the JSON parsing middleware, so we can just take the body and take the ID token from it as a field, because it's already an object. And we cast it to string, and then we calculate the expires in value. What we do here, we need to have a value in milliseconds. So we multiply everything by 1000 so that we do the calculations in milliseconds. Then we multiply 60 seconds, which is a minute, by 60, which is an hour, by 24, which is a day now, and then by 5, and it's 5 days. So expires in 5 days. And then we call the admin API, which we initialized here by requiring it from Firebase admin. We call authenticate. We ask it to create a session cookie using the ID token and tell it how long this cookie should live, 5 days. And after it's done, then we get the session cookie from the callback. We set the session cookie with options, and the most important options here is HTTP only. We want this session cookie to only be available from the backend, so only backend can access, read, and modify it, so that frontend won't be able even to know that there is such a cookie. JavaScript won't see that there is cookie called session. You will though see it in your developer tools, in Chrome at least, maybe not in other browsers. And then we send the JSON with status success, so our application knows that everything is fine. If at any point we get an error, we will send 401 unauthorized. Actually, there is another case when you will send unauthorized, is when CSRF middleware will see that, whoa, the CSRF token is not matching. It's someone else trying to mess with our forms, maybe trying to send it from some other place, not our website. Cool. At this point on the front-end side, you already get got authenticated, you got redirected to the profile page. And if we go back to server.js and see how profile looks like, it's protected route. So what we do here, we try to get session cookie from request cookies, and that this field is added there by cookie middleware that we initialized before. We get the session cookie from it, or an empty string if session cookie is absent. Then we call admin auth verify session cookie. So we call verify session cookie from the auth module, and we send the session cookie and make it check if it was revoked already, passing the second argument true. Then, if everything is fine, we render the profile.html. And if we have an error, then probably something is wrong with our cookie and we need to redirect the person to login page to repeat all the process again. Now, if you open profile.html, you will see that we have the layout, header, paragraph saying that this page is private, and we have session logout link. And this is the last thing we're gonna look at today. So we have session login, we scroll down, and we have session logout. This is regular GET request handler that clears the session cookie and redirects you back to login. And as you don't have session cookie anymore, if you try to go to profile, it will try to read this cookie from the request. It will fail because we removed it, and then it will redirect you to login, because session cookie will be an empty string, and of course it's invalid. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about this implementation, then you can ask me in the comments. I will leave a link to the repo that will have this code that you can play around and try to use your settings of your Firebase application. And if you have any problem, then I would prefer that you send me an example repo where it does not work, so I don't have to guess what exactly went wrong. So good luck, and I hope this video was helpful to you.